A little bonus pod for you. Why not, right?
Is this officially an emergency pod?
No, there's no emergency. It's just a bonus. There's no like, do you think this is an
Yeah.
emergency, is it?
Well, it's unscheduled and there's newsy kind of stuff happening. So to me, that qualifies as an emergency pod. I don't know. You can be the arbiter of whether it's an emergency or not, but I tend to think it is.
Well, in any case, this is the Eagle Eye Podcast presented by Nissan. Reuben, Frank, Dave, Zangaro. We wanted to get on here and talk a little bit. After listening to Howie Roseman and Nick Sirianni, they had their end of the season press conference on Wednesday. The big topic of discussion was Jalen Hurts. So we'll break down everything they said about Hurts and where his standing on the team is going into the offseason, and then some other things toward the end of the pod. But in all about what, like 35 minutes with Howie and Nick. A little tough in a virtual setting to get everything asked, but I thought for the most part, the major topics were hit, and really Hurts was the big one. Is he the guy going forward? That was the big question.
Yeah, and luck of the draw, I got the first question, and I really had no choice. I had to ask about Jalen. You can't get the first question when we talk to Howie twice a year and ask about, Jason Huntley or something like that. Mm-hmm. So, and I asked him, did you see enough from Jalen this year to be comfortable with him moving forward as the guy? And he kind of answered, and he didn't really answer. He kind of said he's done everything we asked him to do, and he's taken the bull by the horns and all that stuff. And I said, well, are you saying he's the guy? He says, yes. So then they kind of expounded on it, and in pretty strong terms. I thought Nick was as strong as he could possibly be. He said, Jalen knows where he stands with us. He knows he's our quarterback. There's no secrets there. He knows he's our guy. You can't be any clearer than that, Dave. And things can change. Howie mentioned that, circumstances can always change. And certainly Howie's a guy that's never going to shut the door on anything. He's going to look into everything, but sure sounds like right now they're thinking about Jalen, and it makes sense, and it's logical in a lot of ways. I didn't think they'd be this strong about it this soon, this early, but there it is. There's no secrets there. He knows he's our guy.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like they're trying to get ahead of this and kill some of the speculation before it runs rampant. And you think I don't know if you watched the press conferences in Indianapolis after their season, and they left the door open for their quarterback. He used to be this quarterback. They really did.
Used to be this quarterback.
Yeah. The Eagles came out. You're right. That's about as strong as they could have been. Now, it doesn't mean circumstances won't change. And how he was reminded on Wednesday of what he said last year about 11 was that I think he said players like that are like fingers on your hand. Well, things change. Obviously, a different circumstance. That quarterback didn't want to be here. This quarterback does. And that's why a lot of that changed.
So by 11, you mean Jeremy Bloom? Who are we talking about?
Not getting me today. But yeah, it was interesting how strongly they came out. And I thought the other notable part about Howie's message was that now it's our job to surround him with a team. And they have 3 first-round picks. They're going to have cap space. So that's the next part of this. And that's, that was really the question. It's like, all right, you can go out and maybe trade for a guy or draft a guy, but then you're taking away those resources that you could use to build a team around Jalen. And he wasn't really even asked about that specifically. He brought that up, and I thought that was noteworthy.
Yeah, that was it. Just kind of that was his theme, was we want to surround this guy. And that's what kind of makes you think this isn't a lip service. This is really what they have in mind at this point, because, I mean, Howie wanted to establish a narrative that I want to use these picks to get talent. I want to surround Jalen Hurts with as much talent as I can. And if I'm going out and trading these picks or, trading up to get a QB, in the top 6 or 7 picks, I can't do that. And it's true. If you trade for Russell Wilson, he's not going to have the talent that Jalen will around him, or on offense and defense. If you trade up and draft Kenny Pickett, you're not going to have enough picks to fill all the needs that this team has. they need more than a quarterback, or they need more than an elite quarterback. And if you do get an elite quarterback, you're not going to be able to surround them with good players. So it makes sense in a lot of ways. I mean, you have a cost-controlled quarterback who's got 2 years left. I mean, his cap figure is ridiculous. It's like $1.6 million. And it's such a luxury to have that because it gives you the flexibility to fill other needs without worrying about some $40 million cap hit for one position, one player. And just by declaring Jalen the quarterback for next year doesn't mean he's the guy for the next 5 years. It doesn't mean he's going to get a long-term deal. It doesn't mean – all it means is you have this cost-control guy. He's functional, and he got better, and he won some games, and he took you to the playoffs at 23. And let's see what happens if we run it back. It doesn't mean we're committed any more than they were before this press conference. It's not like he's saying we're going to sign him to a 6-year, $145 million contract. It just means he's our starting quarterback next year. And it makes sense in every possible way. I mean, this team has a lot of needs. And if we ranked them, quarterback would be toward the bottom, I think, in the middle.
It really depends on what you think of Hurts. That's the trickier. It's the trickiest one.
But if we're honest, I mean, you would certainly put edge rusher ahead of it. You would put wide receiver ahead of quarterback. You would put probably
safety
certainly ahead of it. Linebacker. I mean, so at worst, he'd be in the middle. At worst, quarterback would be in the middle of. I mean, you have a guy who took you to the playoffs, so it's not like an emergent. It's not like you got Bobby Hoying here, who just threw 10 interceptions and no touchdowns, and had a passer rating of 2. So, yeah, I mean, so whatever you think of Jalen, I mean, he's in the middle there in that, in that evaluation. So, really logically, it does make the most sense.
I guess, but you can also make a really strong case for going after a quarterback. Mike Mulhern, our Eagles producer, wrote about it, and I thought he made some strong points. I still lean toward, I think they're better off going into the season with Hurts or next season as their quarterback. But if John Schneider calls, Howie's still picking up the phone.
Sure. But let me ask you this. I don't think they can win a Super Bowl next year, no matter who their quarterback is.
That's probably fair.
So why bring in a guy this year and hurt your ability to get pieces that you get? I mean, 3 first-round picks, that's a once-in-a-lifetime thing. The Eagles have never had that.
Yeah.
And they're all, and they're all in the teens. And yeah,
I get that. But you can also make the same case like landing Russell Wilson could be, you're not going to get that chance again.
Yeah, but if getting Russell Wilson prevents you from, drafting an elite safety and wide receiver, and maybe and then maybe a really good player in the second round potentially, like you think of the second round picks this team has drafted over the years, from Eric Allen, Brian Dawkins to Landon Dickerson. I mean, you're getting a pretty good player possibly. I just think it prevents you from building the way they need to build. I mean, Russell win you a couple more games. I mean, he's still really good, but in the long term, the players they draft next year are in theory, if they draft well, are going to be here playing at a high level long after Russell Wilson has retired, most likely, or isn't playing at this level. So I just think you got to take the long view of it. But you can, and Mike Mulhern did a really good job, and he did lay out a compelling case. I don't think it's a slam dunk, but I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised to hear what Howie says, I guess, is my point. I mean, I would certainly be open to Russ if you didn't have to mortgage the future. I thought Mulhern wrote a really good piece. I would suggest everyone check it out. It's on our site now.
Yeah, you're right, and that's what makes this tricky. That it's not a slam dunk case either way. It's
right.
There's some gray area, and it most of it, though, to me, really comes down to Hurts and how they view him. And it seems like they were impressed by him. I think you have to factor in the way he played in the playoffs, but you can't take away what he did in the regular season. It's a really tricky evaluation.
Yeah, Nick was asked about that, about how he played in the playoffs, and he said, I'll just read one quick quote here. He said, "You take everything into account." He was asked how do you balance the regular season where Jalen played pretty well for the most part, and the playoff game where he was not good at all. You take everything into account. You take into account the whole body of work. You don't just count the Giants game, the 3-interception game. You count the entire body of work. I'm pleased with the way he developed as a passer, as a quarterback. We've seen so many things he got better at. So, they're banking on that improvement to continue, and they're banking on his work ethic, which I don't think anybody disputes, to carry him to, the same way it carried him from 52% to 61% this year. Maybe it takes him to 65% next year, which would be, right around just under the NFL average. So they're banking on it. They're counting on it. But again, if it doesn't happen, it's not like you're on the hook for any dead money, any cap hits. You just go get a quarterback in 2023.
Oh, that it? You just go just go get your quarterback.
And I think part of it is probably the way they feel about the quarterback draft. I think if Howie was in love with any of these QBs, he probably doesn't come out and say this stuff. Any of the first round QBs. I wonder if I think they might just look at this group and say, you know what? Let's run it back. We don't want any of these guys. We don't think any of these guys is a franchise guy. We might like him, but we don't want to take 2 first-round picks out of our 3 and move up to get one. But when we look at next year, and like you said the other day, things change, and the Spencer Rattler thing certainly. But it's supposedly a much deeper draft for quarterbacks in 2023, and they might feel like if Jalen doesn't develop the way we think or the way we hope, we still have assets. We can go get a quarterback next year.
Yeah, it was fascinating though. It's funny because you go through these press conferences and you hear what they say, but you're trying to read between the lines the entire time because they're limited, and we understand that they're not going to come out and be completely honest. It doesn't behoove them to do that. So you're reading between the lines, but I thought they were about as definitive as they could have been about Hurts. They didn't leave the door open.
Yeah.
Now, if things change, and that's the thing, it's like if things change and they trade for Russell Wilson, I think people are going to understand.
Yeah, well, I'm sure people will call Howie a liar. Or Nick.
He's been called worse.
Yeah, he has by us. No. Yeah, that's what really struck me. It wasn't the fact that they gave Jalen a vote of confidence, but just how deep they went into it. And they've already talked to him. Nick said they've already assured him he's our guy. You don't do that if they didn't announce he was the starting quarterback for this year until like the Friday before the season. So we all knew, but it was really interesting. I thought I think it's not a slam dunk. It's not 100%, but I think it's pretty close to that he'll be the quarterback next year. I think it's going to take a really improbable sequence of events to change that. And it would probably include, it would mean, first of all, Seattle would have to agree to, and there's other people other than Russell, but he's most likely. I don't think Jeff Lurie wants anything to do with Deshaun Watson unless something changes, soon significantly. That hasn't, but and Aaron Rodgers, I don't think is going anywhere. But Russell would have to agree to a trade here. He would have to be, Seattle would have to agree to trade him. There's just a lot that has to happen. Obviously, the compensation would have to be agreed on. I don't think it's real likely. So I would say after hearing them talk, I would say it's 90% it'll be Jalen, but there's always that 10% that's going to keep us busy over the next few months.
It will keep us busy because I think they did their best to take that conversation away, but you can't eliminate it completely.
Yeah, and I think it's good for Jalen it's good for his teammates. Any quarterback has. Look, he's a great leader as it is, and the players flock to him and they believe in him and they love being around him and working out with him and training with him. But when the coach and the GM are this clear about this is the guy, it helps us standing in the locker room and gives him that extra, I don't know, I hate that word cachet, but it just kind of, adds to the, to his power, I guess. People look at you different. He's the quarterback. There's no doubt now. I don't think he needed it, but I don't think it hurts.
And it is interesting. It seems like they had a very clear plan that, last offseason, even though we all knew he was the quarterback, they didn't say it. And part of that message from Howie about we wanted them to take the bull by the horns, even though that's a very tired expression, I think that was truthful. I think they really did want to challenge him in a way to show that he was the guy, even though they already knew he was. And now that I think they really did feel confident, maybe not about everything he did on the field, but the leadership aspect and kind of taking ownership of the position. I think they feel like he's at a point now where it's more important for them to back him than it is to challenge him again. And I think that's a relatively smart way to go about it, even though last year was a little goofy because they wouldn't say it was a starter, but I understood what they were doing.
Yeah, I don't think anyone really knows how much better he can be. You don't want to lose sight of the fact that he's 23. And everybody loves the Josh Allen comparisons. And he obviously wasn't very accurate when he started out. Look at him now, but there's also a lot of quarterbacks who weren't accurate and didn't get accurate as well. His improvement is from 52% to 61%. I looked it up. What is it? Vince Young and one other guy, right? Like Brian Sipe or something. The only guy.
Like you said, you looked it up and then asked me what the stat was.
Because you remember this stuff. I look it up and then I forget it and you remember it.
You have to tell me first.
I wrote it, but I don't know. I think it was definitely Vince Young and one other guy like in the 80s who threw at least 100 passes and improved from 50% as a rookie to over 60% their second year, something like that. It was Vince Young was one, and there was one other guy. I think he played for the Browns, and I'm thinking Brian Sipe, but I'm probably wrong. But that's not insignificant. But that doesn't also guarantee that progress, that improvement will continue. So there's a lot of unknowns, and I think they did the right thing today, and I do think it's a long shot that we're going to have to do an emergency pod when they draft a quarterback or sign Russell Wilson or acquire Russell Wilson. But I do think it's possible.
Yeah, that's fair. The one difference, though, and this is me nitpicking a little bit, like a guy like Josh Allen, I get the comparisons there that people bring up, but a player like that has these physical tools, like arm strength, just pure arm strength,
sure,
that Hurts just doesn't have. So it's a little different, but I understand I still understand the main theme. Like guys can get better. Players do get better. It happens.
I still don't think pure arm strength is the biggest issue as much as seeing things and decisiveness. Because I think his arm is good enough. He doesn't have a rocket launcher, but he can fling it. It's just, I think when your technique is off and you're not setting your feet, or you're running, throwing across your body, or you're unsure of where you're delivering the ball, you're not going to have the same zip on it. I think a lot of it is, we've seen him throw some balls with some juice, but he doesn't have a Michael Vick arm, but he's got a good enough arm. I think the problem is, when you're indecisive and you're hesitating, or if you're late to the throw, or if you're not setting your feet, any of those things, it just makes you look like you're just not going to throw the ball as well as if you're doing everything the right way. So I think that's where I think there's room for maybe not more velocity on his throws, but certainly a lot more consistent on his throws, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense. And that's really, that's going to be the plan as he heads into the offseason before year 3.
Score big with the AAA Eagles MVP membership, along with the superb roadside assistance and discounts you've come to expect from AAA. Get exclusive Eagles-related perks. For details, visit AAA.com/Eagles.
You were just talking about it a little bit there. It's pretty clear what the Eagles want him to work on, Jalen Hurts, in this offseason. Nick Sirianni brought it up, and it is a lot of mechanics. It's mechanics and decision making, and some of that stuff, like Nick mentioned, is going to come naturally. The more experience the player gets, the decision making, it's going to become less of a thought process and more innate. But the things that I think Jalen can really work on are the technique, specifically his footwork. And we'll see what he does this offseason. I know last year he worked with Quincy Avery. I'd imagine that's on the table again. Nick actually said they hadn't met with Jalen to go over their specific plan for him in the offseason and find out what he's thinking. But I'd imagine they're going to give him some homework and give him some tape and say, hey, look at your footwork here. Look at your arm angle here, this and that. And we need to get these things corrected.
Yeah, I would think that's true. And, one thing about Jalen Hurts, like nobody's going to outwork him. If it's possible physically for him to get better, he will. But I mean, everybody has their limitations. You can only get so much better. So it's just a matter of where that point is. But I'm confident he'll put in the work. He'll take it seriously. He'll be diligent. You would think he'll probably take a couple of weeks off and then just get right back at it. And he knows where he has to get better. He seems to be very realistic about what he needs to work on and where he needs to improve. The improvement we saw during the year, it wasn't like linear, I guess, but he was better, I think, at the end of the year than earlier in the year as far as seeing things.
In general, yeah.
In general, yeah. I mean, obviously the Giants game was a huge step back, and so was the Tampa game. And again, we don't know how much that ankle was bothering him. I think that's a factor. It's not an excuse, but, it was bad enough for him to be in a boot Sunday after the game. And that was, that's like, what, 5 weeks ago? That was like, so that was a pretty serious injury, more serious than anyone let on at the time. I mean, gosh, they were, Nick said he was he was hopeful Jalen could start the next week, right? I mean, going into the bye, so against the Jets. So I think that was, I think that definitely limited him, held him back, because his whole game changes when he can't run or when he's not a threat to run. And he did do better, down the stretch, making throws when he couldn't run, but still not where he needs to be. But I think he knows all that. I think he knows where he has to improve. And I believe he'll do everything he can to get better in those areas.
Yeah, some of the variables changed this year for that evaluation because the ankle certainly changed things, and then the offensive philosophy changed things. He got better when they asked him to do less, and I don't think that was a coincidence. I think there was some causation there. So, how do you factor that in? Right? Is it like do you care less about the growth because you asked him to do less?
Well, here's how I look at it. They were asking him to do too much early in the year.
Yeah.
So it was, it's not like they said we're gonna try to hide you. I just think they found this running game that was, world class, and he just by a byproduct of that, he was doing less. So I don't think they went into it thinking. I mean, he went from throwing 50 times a game to like 15 or 20. So. I think, ideally somewhere in between is probably best, but, I didn't get we talked about it when it was happening, that this is the worst possible position to put a young quarterback in, where the other team knows what he's going to do, snap after snap after snap, throwing the ball. No young quarterback's going to survive or flourish in that environment. So I don't think they were trying to hide him, the second half of the year. I just think it was a product of, we found this running game that's just beating people down. And, part of that is Jalen's not throwing as much. I still think if he's throwing in the 30s, he's fine. If he's throwing 33 passes, he's fine. 35, 48 to 55 is too many for anybody. So it's weird because there was no in between, it was just went from one extreme to the other. So it's kind of hard to it's hard to really figure where the sweet spot is as far as, let's see if he can handle throwing it 35 times, Let's see if the offense works, if he's not throwing at 50, but he's also not throwing at 15. So I think somewhere in the middle is where they need to be and where he needs to be able to consistently produce in the passing game.
That's fair. You know what would help him?
Another receiver?
Another receiver would help him because
I know how your segues work in your mind.
Yeah, I mean, they have Devontae Smith, who had a very promising rookie season. Very promising. Is he like Nick Sirianni called him like a true number one in the league? He's probably not there yet, but he's gonna be there. So you have him.
He said he's one of the few true number ones in the league. Maybe that's because a lot of teams have two really good receivers, so they don't have a true number one. Maybe that's what he meant. We don't have that. I thought Devontae was very good, made some incredible plays, but I think there's a lot more there with a quarterback. Yeah. Because you look at it, he's out there playing with a quarterback, as we're saying, who doesn't have this advanced, passing game going. So, I think if Devontae was playing with Joe Burrow or somebody, he'd probably have, 400 more yards. But he should next year. You would hope that Jalen makes that, that progress where Devontae's numbers increase substantially. But they've got a problem after that. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah, and it was interesting. Today was the first time Nick Sirianni has kind of revealed the pecking order of receivers. It became obvious as the year went on to everyone that watched that it was Devontae, then Quez, then Reagor. But this is the first time he said it, and that's notable because before the season, when you really don't talk, coaches don't really talk about that stuff during the year, but before the season and after the season is when they really do it. And before the season, it was Quez is our slot. He's the third option. Reagor's too. And that clearly flipped over the year, and they admitted as much. And I mean, they had to, you can't avoid how bad Reagor's been. So they were asked about it on Wednesday, and yeah, both Howie and Nick admitted like he hasn't been good enough. And we talked to him about it. We told him about it. We told him what he needs to improve. And the other part of this is that it doesn't sound like he's going anywhere.
No. And that's not a shock. I mean, you don't want to give up on a first round pick, no matter how unpromising he's been. Is that the word? And you don't want to take on $7.4 million in dead money, by cutting a 23-year-old guy. I guess they could still cut him. Look, they could still cut him at the end of training camp. I think you said the other day, might have been yesterday. I mean, he'll probably be in camp, and you might have been talking about J-Jaw, but he'll be in camp. And I mean, the thing I don't like about it is he's taking reps away from somebody who might actually help you. I mean, there's no way Jalen Reagor is going to help this team. There's just it's impossible. He's just not good enough. He's just not a good player. And, I hate piling on and everything. We've talked about him so much, but the issue is if their offseason is built around Jalen Reagor's our number 3, then they're in trouble because they got to find somebody who can catch the football and get open. Catch a punt if that's what he's been being asked to do. Get you 8 yards on a jet sweep instead of -9. So it's a problem. I mean, they said he's not, he's number 3, and that's like notable because he's not number 2, but he really shouldn't be number 3 either. And I don't have a ton of faith in Quez being a number 2. I'm not sure he's quite good enough. I think he's, for what was he, a 6th-round pick? Was Hightower the 5? Mm-hmm. He did some good things. We know he can run. I don't think he had a particularly good game Sunday. It looked like he slowed down on a couple routes. I mean, when you get a guy in the 6th round, he's gonna be raw. He's gonna be an unfinished product. So he's got some work to do. But I feel like they really need somebody between Devontae and Quez. I just think that's a big priority for this offseason, whether it's a veteran, which I think would make sense, such a young receiving group. They can't go into next year with Devontae, Quez, and Reagor as 1, 2, 3. I think it's a huge mistake.
Yeah, when they talk about them being 1, 2, 3, I think they mean right now because they
I'm just saying, I hope their mindset isn't we're set here. You know,
Yeah, no, I get what you're saying. Yeah,
there's young guys who are going to get better, and I just, yeah, I mean, most young guys, you think they are going to get better. I don't think anybody feels like Jalen Reagor is going to get better. Like you wrote today, or yeah, I mean, he regressed from. He's worse than he was last year, and that was hard to do because he was really bad last year.
Yeah, and one of the built-in excuses as a rookie was that he was injured, which was true. He missed time, and you thought, well, if he's healthy, you could see their reasoning, or at least their explanation. Like, all right, if he's healthy, he has a full offseason, but yeah, they need to go out, and I think signing a veteran makes sense, and they've been burnt before a little bit by veteran receivers.
That's
but
they're signing Kamar Aiken.
Yeah, that's the thing. But the top guys
Reuben
really do
Randall.
break the top guys for the most part break the bank, and there have been some exceptions.
Sorry, I'm sorry.
There have been some exceptions to that, but it makes a lot of sense to get a veteran in there that takes some of the pressure off Devontae Smith, and it would take a lot of pressure off Jalen Hurts, and would give us a chance to actually evaluate him with a real receiving core.
Yeah, I mean, the only veteran receiver in the group was, I mean, I guess technically J-Jaw is a veteran, but really Greg Warden, he barely played. So, I mean, Hurts is out there throwing to 23-year-old guys, and, you know, or 22 or 23-year-old guys. And that makes his job a lot harder. There's no doubt.
Yeah. And coming into the year, you could see their line of thinking that you have these young guys, let them grow together. And at that point, you're still hoping you can get something out of Jalen Reagor, and you're hoping he develops into that true number 2 receiver next to Devontae. Because if that happens, then this offseason, you don't have to spend money or a draft pick to do it. You're set. And that just didn't happen. It never came to reality. So now they're in a situation where, yeah, you have to go find a new player.
And I think Quez would be a fine number 3. I think if you go Devontae, veteran, Quez, now you're cooking with grease here.
Yeah, and there'll be some veteran receivers available. Allen Robinson's the one that comes to mind first. But there are going to be other options.
Yeah.
It depends on, too, I guess, how you see Quez. He played a lot in the slot, and I guess you shouldn't really pick your veteran free agent signing based on where you see Quez, but I think Quez can play outside if you want to find a guy who can give you some inside outside flexibility.
Yeah, I would agree. And I just think this group could use a veteran. I just think and Jalen could use a veteran, a guy he's going to run the right route. He's not just learning the game. You know, he's not just trying to find his way, but a guy who's been in the league. He's made plays. But you're right. I mean, their track record is, you know, I mean, Alshon did okay for a little stretch there.
It worked.
Yeah. Torrey Smith had a good, I guess he might have been a trade. He was, he had a good postseason, 17. That was about it. But I mean, all the Kamar Aikens and Reuben Randalls and Chris Givens and Steve Smith. And I mean, there's just been a litany of these guys, and none of them have even made the roster for the most part. DGB, man, Dennis Kelly's still going strong. Where's DGB right now?
Not doing good.
Dorial Green Beckham. So, yeah, that's been. I mean, overall, their evaluation of wide receivers has been poor. They obviously got one right with Devontae, but and
you know when I knew DGB was a bad trade?
Tell me.
There was one day I was walking toward the locker room, and it was shortly after he got there. And the door on like the other side of the locker room, he was just standing out there. He didn't know his code to get in. And instead of walking around the building and going the other way, he was just standing there. I had to go let him in. At that moment, I was like, I don't know.
He's still out there.
He might still be.
That was the moment where I thought, my tracker.
I don't know if this is going to go too good here.
But he had caught like 50 balls as a rookie, or 42 or something. He had a pretty good. Like we were thinking, man, Dennis Kelly. They're going to really take Dennis Kelly for this. He was 23, caught like 40 balls. You know, he was fast. He had good size. Man, they knew what they were doing. Anyway, we're a little off topic. But
no, I thought we'd get to DGB today.
But yeah, it points to the track record of veteran receivers, and I think Because look, if they take a receiver in the first round, I'm okay with it, but I still like the idea of going defense, defense, defense. I don't think Howie will do that. But there are some receivers who will be available where they pick. So it's hard to imagine taking a receiver in the first round 3 straight years. I think the Lions did it. The Lions are the last team to do that. Did it like in the early 2010s.
Yeah, I remember that. It was that the Charles Johnson and
yeah, I guess that would have been early. Yeah, like 2000.
Mike Williams.
Travis Fulgham.
Not quite.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting. We talk about receivers, and their leading receiver from last year is not even in the league. What a thing Travis Fulgham turned out to be. John Hightower, they didn't even sign him to a futures contract, a guy who in his first couple games had 2 50-yard catches. And it's just weird how guys can get off to – I mean, even Jalen Reagor got off to a good start. His first 3 games, I think he had a 51-yard catch in his first game down the right sideline. And then his third game, he was like 5 for 48, which isn't great, but like that would have been his best game this year, or second best, I guess. But like after 3 games, Jalen Reagor, we're thinking, all right, he's got like 6 catches for 110 yards, and he's a factor. But I mean, when you see somebody regress like that, Fulgham regressed, Hightower regressed, also makes you wonder about the receiving coach. So that's an issue for another day. But it does make you wonder. Nissan just made your choice for a new car an easier one than ever with their most exciting and fuel-efficient lineup. The choice, it's yours. Now get great offers across Nissan's full line. Shop your local Nissan store today at nissanusa.com.
All right, Reuben, I wanted to finish off with it kind of ties into the whole thought about them not mortgaging the future for a quarterback, but Howie admitted they're still in a building phase, which I thought was interesting. And I thought that was notable for him to come out and say that again.
Yeah, that's his nature. I mean, I think he's probably said that every year other than 17. He might have even said it after the 17 season. I mean, he's always got that mentality. So, yeah, but I mean, I think you alluded to this earlier, but the fact that he brought up the value of having those first round picks in terms of adding talent as opposed to going out and acquiring a veteran, the fact that he brought that up without being asked, that's really notable. I mean, that kind of really is a window into his mindset going into the offseason. And look, his track record isn't the best when it comes to first round picks, but he's smart enough to know the holes that this team has. And so, I mean, the reality is they were 9-8, 9-7 really, and beat bad teams and lost to good teams. And he knows that's not good enough. So I think it's the right mentality. I think it's a good mentality to have. I'm glad he didn't come out and start gloating about we made the playoffs after winning 4 games last year. It's a good accomplishment, but it's not really an honest appraisal of where they are right now. So I thought it was good to hear him say that. And really
you don't want to get
go ahead.
No, you don't want to get tricked by the fool's gold of, we're a playoff team, and if we add a piece here and a piece there, all of a sudden we're in the playoffs and we're making a run in the playoffs. And I think that would be a step that some GMs would take. I think some GMs would look at that and be like, hey, let's go for it. And it's a wise decision to say, let's keep the steady build going. We're proud of what we did, but you don't want to get fooled into that. And I think another part of that is when you look at the veterans you have, they're going to have some tough decisions to make. And if you think you're closer than you are, sometimes you flub those decisions. And we've seen that happen before.
And he's been guilty of that. And he's talked a lot about what he learned from that. And you got to let those guys go. I mean, you can't let your feelings for a player, kind of guide you in this. You have to be bloodless, and it's not easy to do that. You get so attached to players. I mean, he's been around, Rodney McLeod every day for 6 years, and it's not easy to just tell a guy like that, yeah, we don't want you. But those are the decisions. And that's just one example. I mean, they might bring Rodney back, but it's not an easy thing to do. And I think he understands that it's something they have to do. I mean, the funny thing about Howie, like, I think Howie is, he always has the right plan. You know, he's always he has a really good feel for that stuff. I think there's a lot to like about the way he does his job. He just struggles in the first round so much. Like, everything else about his GM career is pretty good. You know, trades have been really good. The cap stuff, for the most part, has been really good. The later rounds, I mean, from the third round on, he's drafted really well. It's just, you can't keep missing on first round picks. But again, that's off topic. But yeah, I just think I'm glad he has that mentality. I think that's important.
Yeah, not all. Anything else stand out from the pressers?
There wasn't a whole lot else, I don't think, because kind of everything was kind of intertwined to the same kind of themes: building, adding as many pieces as possible, belief in Jalen. I thought Nick was kind of more, I don't know. He was pretty clear about different guys, and I mean, his talking about Jalen Reagor, and he was really blunt assessment of where he is as a player and how much better he has to get. It's good to hear that. It's good to hear not just getting lip service, and it's good that they told him that. You know, it's good that Jalen, because I don't know what Jalen Reagor's thinking. He tends to kind of blame the wind or the throw, or it wasn't my fault. I'm just, it was a bad call, whatever. I think it's important that they sat him down and they were honest with him. And they told him, look, you got to be better. I'm not sure it's going to help. I'm not sure it matters, but at least they're not sitting Jalen Reagor down and saying, you're the man. You're going to be back here next year. Expect big things from you. They told him he's got to get better. So, but really nothing else. Nothing else really sticks out. I'll have to go through it again. I wish we got to talk to Howie more. He's the general manager. We basically talked to him final cuts and after the season. And we don't talk to Jeff Lurie ever.
Well, we get him draft times.
We get him around the draft. Yeah, we get him
pre-draft, and then normally we'll see this year if he talks at the combine or at Senior Bowl.
Yeah, I'd love to talk to Jeff Lurie. He doesn't talk regularly anymore. He's talked like twice in the last 3 years.
Yeah.
He used to talk before every season and after every season. He doesn't do that anymore. It's just nice to hear from the owner once in a while. He talks when they hire a coach and fire a coach.
Yeah, well, he'll probably talk at owners meetings this year.
Yeah.
About God knows what, but
yeah. But anyway, no, I think that's about it. And interesting day. Do you think there's any chance Jalen will not be the opening day quarterback after hearing what you heard today?
Minimal chance. I don't think it's 100%, but I always thought it was much more likely that he would than he wouldn't, even before these guys talked, and they bumped up the percentage.
Yeah,
I wouldn't say 100% because I don't even think the Eagles would say 100%. Why would they?
Right.
You never know what can happen. So I think they will leave their options open, but they're prepared to go into next year with him as a quarterback. And I think it's the right decision.
Yeah, I do too.
All right. If you enjoyed the Eagle Eye podcast, please rate and subscribe wherever you get your pods. If you're watching on YouTube, please click the like button and subscribe there as well. This was just a bonus pod. We'll have another one for you later in the week. For Reuben, I'm Dave. We'll talk to you soon.